Hello and welcome to our emergency spaces. As the title suggests, we have a communist attack on Bitcoin right now. And I also wanted to welcome John Gordon, good friend, not only of Bitcoin Well, but also of myself, an Illinois native who, frankly, is about to get absolutely screwed by this new law.
Yeah, man, it's insane. We'll talk about it.
Basically, from what I've been able to piece together, and I don't want to talk out of turn here because I am a citizen of the great state of Indiana, so that's why we wanted to make sure that we invited some good Bitcoiners from Illinois. But basically, this came to a head this morning as this imposed tax was kind of slipped in late last night into a bill, and essentially any on-chain movements to yourself, to others, back to an exchange, from an exchange would have this 20 basis point tax associated with it, which to me is kind of laughable because like I would love to see the state or federal government to actually carry out with this and try to actually ding people for these taxes. I think a lot of people have kind of felt this already for a really long time, where not everyone is probably reporting those on-chain or those lightning payments that you're making to, vendors for your coffee or your beef, what have you. And so we just wanted to come together and talk about it.
John, the first thing I kind of want to ask you is in California, I know my governor, Gavin Newsom, who is an absolute moron. I'm not as familiar with your man, JB Pritzker. Can you give a little bit of context on who is this guy?
Yeah, he comes from a lot of money. He's very overweight, and it's a very blue state, and so they're looking for anything to tax. I mean, Illinois is in the worst, if not the worst state, one of the worst, in top 5 worst financial positions for any state, based on outstanding liabilities for pensions and other liabilities that the state has. And so they've welcomed, gambling and cannabis and anything that they can bring in to then tax. And now you see this first of its kind tax in America. It's very upsetting, and it's I think if you're also in another blue state, sure we'll try to be a replicated playbook here. And I think this is the then they fight you stage if it's going to be trying to have a 0.2%, right? So it's not even, it's almost laughable of the quantity, but it's something there. So if you're saying every trade, transfer, custody, right, not even on profit, it's already, Bitcoin is treated as property and not money. So I think, and ultimately this will get challenged in the courts and see if our friend Joe Carlsari or other Bitcoin lawyers can speak more to the specific bill, but at least from the headline and the way it's making waves today, is something that I think a lot of people expected at some point. But yeah, now that it's here, we have an opportunity to come together as Bitcoin community. And I'm sitting here at the Chicago Bitcoin Collective. We're upstairs from Fork and Coin Restaurant. We're really building more of this Bitcoin community here in Chicago. And after I grew up in Illinois and traveled a lot and lived in Texas for a couple of years with the Bitcoin community in Austin, and coming back to Illinois, I thought there was a huge opportunity here, especially in Chicago, for such a big city to have such a limited Bitcoin footprint. But now you're seeing these types of laws put into place. It's, certainly, you want to say surprising, but ultimately it's not surprising. And to think that it's even actionable is we'll see, I guess, how it plays out. But it apparently was signed into law. So, you've got to be mindful of what was signed into law and hopefully have a community to rally and show what Bitcoin can do, because it really is money. So if you're treating it now as money, okay, great. Then probably shouldn't be taxed as property, as capital gains. So I think this is, ultimately Bitcoin is winning when this is, they're trying to get scraps at the table here in Illinois. But you see this happen in other countries already, but to see it happen in the US is certainly troubling.
Well, we've also seen similar, not similar, but we've also seen different states take different stances that have sometimes mitigated or frankly hampered Bitcoin companies' abilities to offer products and services in the state. I think the best example we can always pull from and bully is the state of New York, who for a couple of years made getting a bit license to operate in that state so difficult, frankly, cutting and choking out self-custody for New York residents. And it wasn't until I think last year we finally saw a reversal in that, and we could start to allow, New York residents to self-custody. So sadly, you know, we for too long it felt like our politicians know best. And I feel like I'm in an echo chamber because I know no one listening to this, no one joining this conversation thinks that politicians know best. But it's the everyday person who will see this and think, oh, well, they're probably doing this because Bitcoin's a scam and this is a good thing to do and this is going to protect us. My mind is baffled by this, frankly.
Yeah, I just want to point out too, this is Zach with Bitcoin Well. I just wanted to point out it does seem small of a tax, but it seems like it's a test. Like they're just seeing if they can get away with this. And if so, obviously, like all taxes, they're going to try to take more or see what else they can get. So I'm a little doubtful that it's really going to stick, but it's definitely they're stabbing at something bigger, even though it seems small, at the outset.
All taxes were small at one point, and look where we're at. So
Exactly.
Just your friendly reminder that the federal income tax was a temporary measure introduced during World War I. And in 1895, the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional, and yet they still take money out of our paychecks.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Absolutely. And I think for anyone here in Illinois, it's certainly very alarming. But even if you're in another state, it's the kind of the mask is off, right? Yeah, and that's something that everyone should be aware of at least. And rallying as a community, I see we've got some other folks here from Illinois hopping in.
Yeah,
Andrew, Jeff, or others want to join because I'm sure we'll rally. But this was snuck into a bill that without any industry input, obviously, right? And think it's going to just kind of slide by. And I'm glad that it's getting noticed this early. Because we'll see whether it sticks or not, but it's something that was something.
I also I want to welcome Andrew Tillman onto the stage. Really quickly, one thing I just want to kind of like point out: the issue with things like this, even if it goes to court, it's overruled and it's deemed, not constitutional by the Illinois Constitution or whatever it's deemed, where this is reversed. The bell has been rung. And in instances like this, my issue with it is frankly, like those of us in the space tied to it, we will pay attention to updates on this news, but the everyday person won't. We see it time and time again where, you hear the big story, it gets announced, all the headlines, and then a few weeks later, a retraction is issued like in the footnotes of a different article, and no one realized that actually that original story has been retracted. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking. Andrew, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the stage, man.
Hey, what's up, guys? How are you?
Wish we were speaking under different circumstances, to say the least.
Yeah, well, all right. I'll give you my positive take and my negative take, right? So the positive take is there's been so much infighting in Bitcoin as of like, I don't know, maybe the last year or so. And like so much negativity that I don't really understand. At least we all can like kind of refresh our memory on who the common enemy is, and like we can all unite for once again. So that's my positive. The way I look at this is absolutely just par for the course for Illinois. Pritzker, I really did not have any surprise when I saw that breaking this morning. What I can say, though, is in the background, we have a lot of strong Bitcoin Illinoisans, I don't know how you say it, people in Illinois that are going to fight the hell out of this. And, if this isn't resolved within the next 4 months, we'll be showcasing this in the Midwest Bitcoin Summit. We've already formulated a panel on this with State Rep John Cabello. And man, it's pretty sad to see. From what I can understand, I've had limited time to look at it. They have not included the, tax revenue for this into forecasted budgets. So it would almost kind of show that they're expecting to have this fought in court and that it'll probably get reversed. But it's just kind of par for the course. And it's one of those moments in time where and then they fight you, And so what do we do in these moments? You don't like just kind of jump ship, bail on your state, bail on your city. Like this is where we dig in and we actually collectively unite and we fight back on this. And so I'm very optimistic just from the small closed communities that I have access to through different private channels, and I can see a lot of people organizing behind the scenes, and there will be a lawsuit that is formed on this.
Which was a little bit just like, what has in the last couple of years, what has the sentiment been in Illinois? Has it been a state where you have felt like it's been easy to grow and set up businesses that are operating the Bitcoin, and I'll say the bad word, crypto space? Or has it been something of a bit of a challenge, a hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, maybe John can speak to this a little bit more, but for me, so I've been supporting, the All Bitcoin Reserve, the Bitcoin Scholarship Foundation, obviously the Midwest Bitcoin Summit. But I last year I spoke with well over 20 policymakers in the state of Illinois, heavily Democratic, and like maybe a few Republicans, but the overall like consensus from the political landscape of Illinois is they fucking hate Bitcoin, and they hate it because they don't understand it, or they hate it because it's like maybe in their mind associated with Trump and it's a Trump thing. But they're just hostile toward it because they have like whatever FUD in their mind that just kind of permeates and circulates inside their echo chamber. So it's been very difficult to operate in this space. And one thing that I can say, you have to like approach Illinois a little bit differently, especially in the Chicagoland area as you're talking to policymakers. The thing that they either care about or pretend to care about is their people, the voting base, which is heavily, impoverished communities and stuff like that. So we've taken the angle to bring the more humanitarian side of Bitcoin to light for the Democratic Party, especially for the politicians inside Chicago. But it's just an uphill battle all day long, every single time. There's been like maybe one Democratic policymaker that we've had a conversation with that actually went well. Like the rest of them are very hostile.
Yeah, I'd say that you see it in the fact that they're even losing the Bears, right? I mean, there's just complete incompetence from the leadership and trying to even negotiate the next stadium deal or whatnot. The Bears are probably moving to Indiana. Now you said some of you guys are out in Indiana, but so that'll rile up more people than the Bitcoin or digital asset policy here, because it's just Bitcoin's gotten politicized at this point, and Illinois being a generally blue state, it's just there's a lot of antagonism in general. I mean, I wouldn't say even setting up our entity here, we haven't experienced anything yet, but we see ourselves as Chicago Bitcoin Collective and Fork and Coin being an open door for individuals to come and learn about Bitcoin, see it in action, paying in Bitcoin for high quality food and showing that connection between Bitcoin and health and quality and really value for value, and something we're looking to put on here in mid-September. So keep an eye out for that, a value for value festival, forum, concert, music, food, education. I think in this shows even more. We have really talented Bitcoiners in and around the Chicagoland area that are working on everything from at-home mining and deep in the energy sector to self-custody and tools, to different financial services. I launched, we have a Bitcoin health savings account, Sound HSA, that I'm working on, and individuals that work also at some of the bigger Bitcoin companies that are here in Chicago. So I think, to Andrew's point, it can certainly be unifying where there may have been differences on certain policies. We have multiple bit devs now, both that's hosted in the Strike office downtown and here at CBC, different times of the month. So we'll see what the response can be. I'm confident in the Bitcoiners here, but to your question, I do think Illinois is very clearly not not been a friendly state towards Bitcoin in general. I know there definitely is some mining in the state. There's some Bitcoin ATM companies, crypto ATM companies that have been around for quite a while. But this is definitely them trying to plant a flag and say, no, don't want this here, which at the end of the day, it's as to your title, communist attack. It is a redistribution of wealth ultimately that they're going for.
I'm just like doing a little bit more digging as you've flagged some things about JB Pritzker. Did not realize this man's net worth is $3.7 billion. And then the scumbag bought the multi-million-dollar mansion next to his existing one, had the contractor remove all the toilets, kitchen fixtures, so the home could be classified as uninhabitable or vacant for property tax purposes. So he uses the tax code to his advantage, his benefit, and then squeezes and absolutely just wrecks his own constituents. Tim, welcome to the stage. Thoughts, comments, concerns, or you just want to tell me my hair looks great? That works too.
Hey guys, just jumped in. I haven't caught much of your story going on. Anything new in the news today?
Just a quick little commie attack. Just nothing too different in the Bitcoin world than we're used to at this point. Essentially, we just been, I think, venting our frustrations over this would be the best way. This is a bit of a cope sesh for sure.
Yeah, nothing was discussed when we went to the Illinois House Republicans. We hosted a workshop for them in February. They had no wind of it. Everybody was blindsided. It seems like it was just shoved in a 1,600-page omnibus bill at the last moment and passed under darkness. One of those things by candlelight. It seems like a power grab. It seems less about like we need revenue and more about political posturing to me. Like you guys mentioned, Pritzker's considering running for president. Why would he do this like right before a strategic Bitcoin reserve, right before the Clarity Act, all that stuff?
Talk to me a little bit. Like I'm familiar with the way my communist state of California operates, and how, unfortunately, because our entire state legislative system is owned and operated by the Democratic machine, it's very easy for laws that the Democrats want to push forward to get pushed forward. That said, we do have, I think it's the stupidest thing ever, but like our proposition system does prevent every single law being kind of pushed forward by our government. And if we get enough signatures in a petition, we can propose a proposition to then have the citizens vote on. And we do it every goddamn time, including this last election, voting yes to increase our own taxes. And then in 6 months, we're like, wait, why is it so expensive in California? Can you speak a little bit to just what is the dynamic of the internal state legislators in the state of Illinois? I know you mentioned Chicago being blue and Illinois being a blue state, but is it just overwhelmingly controlled by Democrats?
It is. It is top down, and the biggest thing is that anything that's deemed pro-Trump is dead in the water. And just like if you look back a year or so ago when Representative Cabello put forth the SBR, the state level SBR, a lot of states were doing that. He even had a bipartisan support until Pritzker got wind. I mean, I jumped into your call when you guys were talking about how rich he is. He's rich and powerful, and once he caught wind of that, it just got shot down. So it's pretty controlled, like California, like New York, like Oregon or the West Coast out there.
I want to just I want to not shift the conversation, but we've brought this up now a couple of times, and I think there's merit to this. I brought this up when I have discussions on different podcasts as well. How whether or not you voted for Trump or support the Bitcoin and crypto policies he's put forward, like Trump himself is a very polarizing figure. Mm-hmm. And as a result, just naturally, if you don't like Trump, you will just, your instinct, your knee-jerk reaction is, well, I don't want that policy because Trump wants it. Like, you don't necessarily think things through. I just, more generally right now, this is a question for each person on the panel right now. Do you think Trump has been a net positive or a net negative for Bitcoin in this country?
I tend to be the guy that believes everything is good for Bitcoin, even if you might think about this tax itself. We always talk about how Americans don't really understand Bitcoin, but you go to a third world nation or something where there's a lot of censorship, they get the value proposition right away. So even though this is a short-term negative, you got to think the more that they press, the more people are going to see, oh shit, this is pushback. Now, as far as Trump, yeah, it's a very quick positive, but there is all that negative pushback that now, oh, you're a Bitcoin guy, you think you're a Trump guy. I'm personally not. I still think the long term, after this settles, you're going to see more positives come from this. Maybe not in the way that you'd expect.
Fair. John?
I mean, there's a lot of cronyism in the fiat world going on. And this is certainly in Illinois, and you mentioned Pritzker's wealth. It's like, yeah, it's incredibly hypocritical. And then, but still, even at the national level, I think, on the whole, the conversation for businesses under Trump has been extremely positive compared to the prior administration. If you look at
Zach, just like, do you think Trump has been a net positive for Bitcoin?
You know, I had hope at the beginning, and I didn't vote because I just don't believe in government as an institution. But, you know, in 2016, I took a lot of flack because I defended him a lot because the media was just making up a lot of lies, just a lot of BS going on. And so I defended the guy a lot and got called a Nazi for it and all this. And I'm like, bro, I'm an anarchist. I'm not even voting. I'm just saying that they're making up lies about him. In all the intervening years, I feel better and better about my decision not to vote because, again, I just feel like it's a trap. Like, getting you to believe in politicians and that they could make your life better, that they're going to fix things. All of it is a way just to disempower you and to get you to stop trying to fix your own life and your own community and your own family. Like, government is not going to fix anything. They're only going to hurt things with anything they're trying to do. So no, I gotta say, no, I don't think it's been positive. You know, I agree with the other guy who was saying, you know, everything is good for Bitcoin ultimately, but no, I don't think him in particular has like made anyone's life better. Maybe some things in the short term, but if it's using the institution of government and if it's getting people to believe in government more, that's only a net negative. Like, I don't see that as positively affecting any of our personal lives or the country as a whole. Like, I just can't buy into it anymore.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, John.
Hey, so I was just going to say, you know, I think that with the cronyism, certainly seeing what happened with Trump coin and being close to a money printer and more of the shitcoining was certainly a negative. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, government is not here to save us. It's here to take from us. And Bitcoin has the opportunity to separate money and state, but we're in a world that has been controlled with fiat money for 55 years and plus, right? So it's going to be difficult to wrestle that power away. So I think, yeah, not getting too high on any one politician, but certainly when there's attacks, you know, those getting called out, I think is really important. So that's where there's certainly been less attacks and a better environment to build in the last couple of years. And you certainly sense that across the industry compared to the prior few years before that. And more people willing to come out and say, yeah, I'm a Bitcoiner and I believe in free money and free markets, compared to where we were if this had happened, you know, a few years ago. So yeah, I think it's positive direction, but as we see, things can change on a dime quickly.
I had a question for the Illinois panelists. So I was looking more into this, and it seems like Bitcoin isn't the only focus. Like, there's a lot of, they called it a digital dragnet, where they're trying to just go crazy taxing anything that's digital. There's like a 10% tax on digital advertising. There's a progressive monthly fee on social media platforms based on the volume of users from Illinois, which I'm not even sure how that would work. And they're trying to do more taxes like on the prediction markets and stuff like that. Is there like a lot of desperation going on in the Illinois government where they're just like grasping at things to like fix their budget? Or I'm just curious if people know more about like the local situation.
Is that business as usual?
Tim, you can speak to that and maybe mention more in the Illinois Bitcoin Council what everyone's up to. But yeah, I think that's par for the course here in Illinois from what I've seen.
100%. Yeah, it's yeah, I couldn't say it better. What's funny, as I was researching this this morning, did you guys know, so this tax affects brokers, right? Did you know that back in 2021, Pritzker was on stage saying, quote, open for business, quote, in regards to crypto. And Illinois gave a $1.7 million state tax credit to keep its headquarters in Chicago, coin flips, that is. And then just turn around and do this a few years later.
Stabbing them in the back.
This is like also like a classic, I feel like, political tactic. I just, it's never about like what actually makes sense. It's just who gave them the most money recently. My biggest argument on like who has Trump helped the most in the Bitcoin and crypto space, well, just follow the money. Whoever's given him the most money has gotten the most rewards out of the federal government administration. And I'm willing to bet if we follow the money in Illinois, there's something similar, a paper trail. I did invite, however, we may regret it, we may not, we will see. But my good friend Tatum, welcome to the panel, my friend.
Happy to be here. Glad to be here. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
In case you missed the news, Tatum, Illinois has decided to become an absolute communist state, unlike your home state, which is, I guess, more freedom focused.
No, the thing about Mississippi is that we're just, how do I say this, retarded. So they don't even know that Bitcoin or crypto exist. But yeah, I did see the and trust me, if y'all have seen me, you know that this statement holds a lot of weight. No pun intended. This guy's fat. Look, I mean, I don't want to, just go for looks, but as a big guy, you got to say, like, come on, dude, you're not doing good for the home team. But yeah, also, I'm very curious on how they expect to enforce it, or what the ramifications are going to be specifically for non-custodial wallets, because I mean, non-custodial stuff, you could still in theory use that within Illinois. I don't know how they would monitor that, but then I'm curious if/when they do find out that some Joe Blow, moved his Bitcoin to cold storage in Illinois, but didn't pay taxes on it. Like, what's that going to hold for him? This is dumb. They're just saying shit right now.
So yeah, it leans on brokers to track. So enforcement is the real question. Like, so you got to track who's an Illinois customer. You got to value every bit of activity, report monthly. You get a felony exposure if you get it wrong. So think about like an out-of-state platform trying to serve a small market. That's a heavy build. They're going to just geofence Illinois out of it. But the enforcement, it's opposite of the goal. It's going to just push people away. And if you're really concerned about revenue, you're not getting the revenue you wanted.
Yeah, more compliance costs just being passed on to the exchanges and other businesses that are operating in the state, which again, surprise, surprise, in partnership with Chain Analysis, I'm sure loading up on deck. Real quick, I just wanted to shift gears because I know he has to jump, but I just wanted to shout out Ilya. Ilya is a great Indiana Bitcoiner who helped lead the Bitcoin Bill of Rights. And so I know he has to hop off here soon. So I definitely wanted to make sure he just got a shout out, but also connect him with Tim as well. And you guys, should connect. And if there's anything that we can help you guys with.
Yeah, I appreciate it and happy to hang out for a few minutes. Some context, I'm a miner in Indiana, a company called Megawatt. But a few years ago, if you guys remember, Elizabeth Warren had this thing called the Dame tax, which was going to tax Bitcoin mining federally. It luckily died, but I saw that as a threat at a state level. So I try to be proactive and try to think of what we can actually do about it instead of just bitch and complain candidly. So I looked for people in Indiana that either were working on laws or had passed laws that would help protect businesses against bad policy. And I found nobody. And that's probably my single piece of advice to anybody, unfortunately not in Illinois, because Illinois looks like passing bad policy, is you probably have way more power than you realize because nobody is focused on passing good policy. And in the absence of passing good policy, bad policy like what Illinois is passing can sneak through. So it took us 3 years, but we got bipartisan support. So it's not just because Indiana is typically a red state. Like, we got Democrats on board too because we employ people in the state. We pay taxes in this state. And what we were asking for was not any sort of tax break or beneficial policy for Bitcoin. We were just saying, hey, don't discriminate against us and treat us the same as you would any other industry. And that led eventually, finding the right people, to actually passing a law that protects against this exact thing from happening in Indiana, as well as other cool things like the right to run a node. And if you get in trouble, they can't confiscate your private keys and all these other crazy things.
I gotta say, I always love hearing the stories of the Bitcoiners who are fighting the fight and are able to find success, because I feel like sometimes there's a bit of hopelessness when it comes to discussions around policymakers and their stances on Bitcoin. And I want to go back to what I said about like the way these types of stories end up coming through. And even if this ends up getting reversed in the courts, like the bell has been rung. And I think the best example that we saw was in the lead up to the 2024 election, Kamala was taking a very, very harsh stance against the Bitcoin and crypto space until about 8 weeks out from election day. And she did a complete 180. But the truth is, like, a lot of Dems still think that, Dems are against Bitcoin, when in fact, the Democratic candidate for president in the last election cycle realized that there's so much money to be had by supporting this contingent and this group that they even flip the script. So I think that while we see outwardly that, oh, it's a Trump thing, it's a Republican thing, like in actuality, I think there is a slow and steady shift and change happening, but it's so quiet that unless you're paying attention, you miss it.
I totally agree. And I say let them fight on the federal level, and that's what's going to get the headlines. But on a state by state level, you'd be surprised how many politicians are just looking to pass laws, like whether it's ego or they want to do the right thing. I'm not quite sure. But you find somebody that wants to do the right thing. And if you present them with something that's not biased towards our industry, it's just common sense stuff. You'd be surprised if you actually get in front of them and don't sound crazy, you can actually get a lot accomplished.
I want to just kind of also keep the conversation focused on just the way legislation is coming and attacking Bitcoin. I know that, there's a lot of conversation right now also about the Clarity Act. Will it get passed? What will it look like when it gets passed? I'd love to maybe get a sense from the Illinois and Indiana folks of like, what is the sentiment in your guys' state around the Clarity Act?
This isn't going to be a direct answer to your question, but I'll take it as the Indiana guy, I guess, or one of the Indiana guys. I think there's a lot of stuff in the Clarity Act that most of it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, and I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. So to me, there's a sliver of it that's pro Bitcoin, but more than anything, whether it passes, whether it fails, I want the thing to get voted on so we can all move on with their lives. And to me, that's going to be the best momentum for Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, like any other market, doesn't like uncertainty. And this thing hanging out there with Jamie Dimon commenting on it and Brian Armstrong somehow being our champion, which I never want that to be the case. That's the world we're currently living in, and I would like both of those people to go away.
Tatum, what have your thoughts been around the increased news surrounding the Clarity Act?
I'm going to be completely honest. At some point, I turned if I set a mute for the keyword Clarity Act in my head. At a certain point, I don't know when that was, and I'll see breaking Clarity Act, and then I'll see a picture of Cynthia Lummis or something, and then not read it. So, really excited for it or disappointed, depending on what it is. So, yep.
I'm glad you finally admit that your brain only works like 20% of the time, my friend.
That is a generous estimate.
I will say,
remember, I am in Mississippi.
Hey, look, I have long said, like, my tax dollars fund your state operating. So commie California.
But the thing is, they don't. I don't know where the hell our taxes go, because they're not fixing roads, dude. It's like if you drive anywhere in Jackson, Mississippi, you can guarantee that you're going to need to go straight to the body shop. I literally went on a bridge and the gap destroyed my shock. What the hell? Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk about Mississippi.
I'm not going to let you fully side quest us into the deep south. We're going to stay in the Midwest a little bit. And I want Tim, if you want to speak a little bit to what some of the vibes or thoughts are in the Clarity Act with some of the people that you're speaking with.
Clarity Act, I agree with everything that's been said. Yes, we do need some, no pun intended, clarity, because for the market's sake. But the developer protection is the only thing that I'm really interested in inside of that. I believe that's the only thing Clarity Act has anything to do with Bitcoin, that area. So yeah, it just needs to get settled once and for all. Obviously, the banking issues, the stablecoin yield or whatever, is still holding it up, and it's stupid that they. Obviously, who wants competition? Only weak people, I guess, but or people who already have a moat. But that seems to be what's holding it back. And other than that, I just want it to be over with too.
I think though, like the other thing, and I'm gonna my girlfriend likes the Real Housewives. She's a Bravo fan. My reality TV is genuinely politics. Like our entire political system is the best reality TV. And it just saddens me that it actually impacts our day-to-day lives. I think the thing that concerns me about the Clarity Act is not necessarily how outwardly it's focused on, the stable coins, the interest and all that BS. It's more the fact that it becomes a bill that naturally there become these random line items that just get thrown in. Oh, we're actually going to take away tax loss harvesting. Even though we classify Bitcoin as a commodity and a property, you can't tax loss harvest the way you have been. It's now subject to the wash sale rule or some other BS around self custody or whatever they decide to just at the 11th hour say, well, if we add this one line, like everyone's okay with it, so why don't we just add it? And we get these massive bills that we don't realize the impact of the second and third order effects just by blindly accepting, like, okay, whatever, go forward with your anti or your pro or anti, whatever it ends up being, stable coin issuance bill.
Yeah. And that I'll just add there, Q, and I got to jump here in a second, but about coming back to Illinois and the fact that this line on digital asset tax at 0.2% was just thrown into a bill that wasn't even discussed, right? And the bigger issue here is looking up the numbers, $183 billion that Illinois is on the hook for between the bond debt and the pension debt is almost $150 billion of it. So they're pulling at scraps here to try to pay down these liabilities. There's the several $1 billion deficit every year. And so, yeah, this is the next target, right, of Bitcoin, but crypto more broadly. And I mean, already the response, I think, has been great, and we'll keep pushing back because it's not what we see here for, coming up on 250 years of America. And it's just completely un-American. But the tyranny has been here before, and it'll continue. So we just got to put up a good fight and keep advocating for freedom and our rights to use Bitcoin.
I know the Midwest Bitcoin Summit has been waiting patiently, so please go ahead.
Hey, sorry, this is Andrew Tilman again. I just have to manage the account, so I swapped over here. But yeah, to John's point, the state of Illinois is 144 billion in debt, or they owe 144 billion to unfunded liabilities, which is like an extremely low funding ratio. It's like 48%. So, I mean, I would expect states like Illinois to become increasingly more desperate to find ways to steal money from their populace and the economy that actually works. But no, the reason why I had my hand up is going back to the Clarity Act. I was wondering if, Ilya, maybe you could touch on this. I was looking at some of the language in there and just kind of unpacking it, but as far as I understand it, for the miners, there's language in there that requires them to register with the CFTC. And it's like, some of the negatives that I was reading about is like, this may be legally kind of like cost prohibitive for some of the smaller medium miners. And have you looked into this? And if you have, is this like kind of a nothing burger, or is this actually significant for operations?
There's pros and cons to that. So CFTC has I was going to say friendly, but I'll say like normal person view on Bitcoin, meaning they treat it like an actual asset and a commodity in this case. So from that standpoint, I think it's good for Bitcoin. I think if the Clarity Act passes, that's probably the one benefit. For miners, registering never makes me feel good. As an example, we all hear about data center, AI, HPC, and all of these utilities and independent system operators like a PJM or a MISO, if you guys are familiar with that, they're up in arms because there's not enough energy on the grid. Well, Bitcoin miners, we're the guys that turn off to help balance the grid to release some of that energy. So we're providing a service. And there's curtailment programs that miners nationwide enroll in to do that, to get some compensation for it. And that should be a win for everybody. It should be a win for the utility, should be a win for the grid, should be a win for AI data centers, for people's houses and keeping energy prices stable, all of that. Well, PJM specifically, which is a grid that stretches from like New Jersey and Pennsylvania all the way into the Midwest and includes Chicago and parts of Indiana, they actually require not only miners to register, but they wanted us to say exactly what kind of equipment we're running and the efficiency of that equipment, so that they're determining through some algorithm that we don't have access to whether it makes sense in their eyes for them to curtail or for quote unquote gaming the system. Now, I have no idea what gaming the system is because we're just playing by the rules that they set in the first place, but registering allows them to do it. And I have no idea how they're going to keep up with that, because if we say we have a bunch of S19J pros, if everybody's familiar with that, are they going to come on site and make sure that they're S19J pros and not what's mine or M60 or M70Ss? And do they know what they're looking at? I'm pretty confident they don't, and they've never been to our site, but registering opens up that risk and that headache, frankly. So do I think it's going to be detrimental to small and mid-sized miners long-term? No, because these guys aren't going to come on site and do all these things. Does it open up a risk vector that I think sets a really, really bad precedent? Absolutely. So we'll see what happens. And then one more thing, because I've got to jump in a minute. If anybody in any other state, because we'll take the bears from Illinois, we'll take all the Bitcoiners from Illinois and move them to Indiana. But any other state that wants to work on proactive,
Too soon.
proactive Bitcoin legislation, I'm happy to share our bill. I'm happy to share kind of how I got in touch and email scripts, like open source the whole thing. Because to me, I'm not as much pro Indiana as I'm pro Bitcoin. So as much as I'm talking shit about the bears coming over, like I'm pro Illinois. I want Illinois to have good Bitcoin policy. So I'm happy to share down to the emails and text messages and wording and all that stuff, because we got protections against exactly what Illinois did. And I mentioned self-custody and some of these other things like writing a node, but like I'm seeing one of the listeners here with the Samourai logo. We have developer protections too. And we didn't have to twist anybody's arm for it. Like once you explain to somebody face-to-face why we want developer protections, it's not a controversial issue. It's just common sense. So happy to share all that. And thank you guys for having me on.
Of course, if you have a moment, I do want to kind of double click on some of the curtailment stuff, because I find it so fascinating. Because like in some of the conversations that I have with people where I talk about how curtailment has helped in ERCOT, and we have the proof. We have visible data and proof that by utilizing these Bitcoin miners to turn off and on during peak and non-peak out times, or I guess in the inverse of that, we're able to help enhance the grid. But still, people are so stuck on this idea of you're using more energy. Like, what are the conversations you're having to kind of get people over that hurdle?
You know, it's funny because that was exactly the problem we were having for years. And I was trying to do this educational tour. With the rise of data centers, all of a sudden, that's everybody's enemy. And all of a sudden now, what we say lands better. Like as part of the bill we passed, I did a Senate testimony, and my entire presentation was just to show a side by side of this 3 gigawatt Amazon facility that they built in Indiana staying online during a winter storm, versus just showing like an actual chart where it showed the price of energy going up, our load at the site going down, the price of energy going down, our load turning on. And I showed that over the course of a few weeks. And I did this whole presentation in January when it was like 5 degrees outside and everybody was freezing. And I think that visual, coupled with the fact that everybody was just cold, all of a sudden landed and they got. So AI data centers, whatever you want to say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I don't view them as an enemy, but they actually help us tell that story.
I was so glad when the focus shifted to AI data centers being the bad guys, because like you're right, it was more difficult to land. The fact of the matter is that Bitcoin mining is not bad for the internet. Based on data, not bad for the environment. Based on the data and actual statistics that we have, it is a net positive because it is the industry that uses the most percentage-wise sustainable energy. That was from a report that I can't remember who did it, but it was in 2024, I think. So I can only imagine it's gotten better, especially as it's pivoted over to AI, HPC as well. But yeah, you're right. It's easier to explain that and have someone be like, okay, cool, I'll just worry about how AI data centers are somehow making water disappear.
Right. And there's peer-reviewed studies that support Tatum, what you're saying. There's dozens of them. Like I know Daniel Batten puts out a bunch of them on Twitter if you guys aren't following him. There's another one, Margot, I think is her name, Perez, has recently, she did a PhD dissertation on this. Like at this point, it's not just a bunch of us on a Twitter space is saying it. There's like actual stats and actual peer-reviewed studies that you can give to politicians or anybody else you're talking to.
And I always will shout out the work of Dan Batten in this space, because I think his journey is the most important story of it, to go from someone who is so anti Bitcoin mining, working for Greenpeace, to then do a complete 180, do his own research and realize actually this is the best thing for the environment. And we can help the environment by mining Bitcoin.
Completely agree.
If it wasn't for Bitcoin miners in the when Texas froze over in 2022, I have a sure thought that there would have been a lot more deaths because Bitcoin miners across Texas were able to give back a ton of energy to the grid that they would have otherwise not had if they were stressing it that hard and didn't have anything to rely back on.
Totally. I mean, people did die before ERCOT decided to start to figure out how to enhance the grid properly and eventually use Bitcoin mining for it. Like, people died. There were deaths in the years prior to this. So it's not like a hyperbole to say like people's lives are at stake if we do or don't do these things.
I've
I
said
totally
that
agree.
Bitcoin mining saves lives, and people are like, "Oh, that's silly." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. It actually does."
No, exactly. But here's the most obnoxious thing, and I'm going to be on a soapbox when I say this because I need to bring it back to why we started this discussion to begin with. But like, the people we are entrusting to make decisions for the betterment of our society need to understand these things before they make outlandish decisions like this. Because based on this tax right now, like I was explaining it to my girlfriend this morning who has family in Illinois, well, I'm like, this is insane. If you were to just go from your hot wallet to your cold wallet, you owe a tax. If you were to withdraw from an exchange to your cold storage wallet, you owe a tax. That's insane. That's no different than if I went from my checkings account to my savings account, I owe a tax on that. And everyone here has seen the video, that TikTok of the girl who's like, wait, so you're telling me I'm paid with money. And when I'm paid with money, I pay taxes on that. And then when I go and I spend this money, I also have to pay taxes to spend this money. And then when the person receiving the money also has to pay taxes when they receive this money that's already been taxed 2 times over. And then at the end of the year, whatever money is left, I'm also paying taxes on top of that. Like, we live in an archaic system.
Agreed. One more thing I'll say, to both your point and Tatum's point about ERCOT and Bitcoin mining saving lives. Like, one, I unfortunately think that's very, very true and was true in that case when the grid failed in Texas. The scarier part is that ERCOT is actually the most advanced grid that we have. So with the rise of all this energy load, whether you're PJM, MISO, SPP, any of these other ISOs, so this is stretching the rest of the country for those unfamiliar with the energy grid, those grids are 50 years in the past as far as real-time energy prices and reacting to signals, the number of miners they have that are able to turn off. So this problem is only going to get worse. And Bitcoin mining is maybe not the entire solution, but a huge part of it.
It is the most flexible load that you can have. Batteries are slower than Bitcoin mining, turning on and off. And like, I agree it's not the entire solution, but it is a hefty part. I'm actually working with someone who is working on kind of a combined AI Bitcoin facility. So they're going to have a certain amount of electricity that they're going to convert when they're not fully maximizing it. They're going to use Bitcoin mining to take up all of it, but then they're also going to try to use that in a smaller capacity at some point to like also offset with the grid too. I don't fully understand the entire structure they were explaining, but it backed up on the idea of Bitcoin mining being just an extremely flexible load that is also profit.
I think, I aptly have now changed the name of this because, it is a fact that Bitcoin mining saves lives. We have clearly established that we are the new heroes of this space by far. Ilya, I honestly could probably talk to you for days. Tatum, I will annoyingly talk to you for years. But Ilya, I want to respect your time, and I know you mentioned you do need to get going soon, so I will let you kind of sign off before Tatum and I begin our incoherent rambles together.
Really appreciate you guys having me on, and sorry for pivoting it into mining. Genuinely, the other part of what
this is my favorite thing to talk about. Do not say sorry. Redo your sign off.
Ilya, if it wasn't you, I was going to pivot. It was only inevitable.
That makes me feel better. But the other part of, a hobby more than the day job was passing that law in Indiana. And I'd love to see more Bitcoin laws get passed. So anybody who's listening, shoot me a DM and I'm happy to just open source that whole thing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ilya. Tatum, they fucked up. They left the two of us here alone with a hot mic and no regard or supervision.
I hope that you are enjoying your last day working for Bitcoin Well.
I hope that you're enjoying your last day working for Compass.
Hey, we're just going to start a podcast tomorrow, I guess. That's the only logical thing to do.
Oh, I forgot to tell you. I already did. You're not invited.
Damn it.
I want to go back, though, to I just posted this thing from Autism Capital. And I want to bring Zach into this because I know Zach is our local anarchist, whereas like I still, believe that we need some people leading the charge. Otherwise, utter chaos will ensue. But just today, my commie state of California also passed an insane law where you have to prove you are gay in order to get LGBT.
Oh, they do that in Turkey, I think, or maybe
really?
not. It was someone I looked, or they said that they looked it up. It was on Kill Tony, but there was this kid. No, I think it was Uzbekistan. I don't know, somewhere random. And he was like, "Yeah, you're accepted from joining the military if you're something, and then or also gay." And they're like, "How do you tell?" And they're like, "You have to film a video of you proving it." And someone on stage said they looked it up. I didn't bother to actually look it up, but. Anyway, you didn't need to know about that, but okay.
Wait, why'd you stop?
Because I realized that I was talking about sending videos to prove that you're gay to get out of being in the army, and that was a really big derailment.
It's fine. I just changed the title of this to say politicians want you to be gay. So
That is 100% true.
they do. I mean, I think it's insane. Like, look, I'm going to read off the Autism Capital tweet that I pinned, but you can't in Illinois. If you lose money, you can't use it to offset taxes in later years. In California, you have to get consent. They have to get consent from you to prove that you're gay for contracts. And then in Illinois, they just ram it up your butt without asking. Like, we're now entering an era where we are blindly accepting politicians' stances on whatever it is they push forward, not because we're critically thinking through what is this law for? What is it? What is the purpose of this? And how can this, if anything, benefit us? It's just, well, my team did it. This guy's a Democrat, so I have to support his bill. Oh, this guy's a Republican. My team did it. I have to support this bill. Like, we're just like blind sheep following things right now. And it frustrates me because in this country, we have the First Amendment. And again, why was the First Amendment created? Why was it the first law that our founding fathers created? Well, because prior to the American Revolution, the American colonies were printing pretty in the context of the times, hurtful things to the King of England. To us, it's like, I don't know, a Tuesday afternoon on Twitter at this point. But that prompted England to take aggressive actions against the US, and the US founding fathers decided, hey, we should allow our citizens the right to speak up against us if we're doing something wrong, because that's what led us here. And we've lost sight of that. And it just, I don't know. Again, I'm on my soapbox. Just mute me for a second. I'm frustrated. Zach, tell us why no government is actually the right solution.
Because everything government does is actually anti-humanity and anti-freedom, and it's all designed to crush us, to crush your spirit. It's not you have to look at what a thing does, what it produces, not what it claims to do. And everything that they do that claims to be for the good ends up killing us and harming society in every conceivable way. It's like, going back to the whole grid issue, it's like, why do we have all these grid issues? Is all the climate change stuff, has that helped humanity? Has being worried about the environment in that way helped humanity? They use they know how to use bumper stickers and get people underneath all these banners that sound good and sound like it's helpful, but it's actually things designed to turn humanity against itself and crush the human spirit. Like that's what government does. It's literally slavery based in a religious context, to where it takes your faith and feeds it into itself to give it power over you and everyone else. Like, I could rant on that too. And it's it's kind of like the whole fish and water thing. It's hard for people to see it clearly because the language and the words have been used so expertly over thousands of years, where they have, honed what is the best way to control people and make them feel like they're doing something good when they're actually doing harm and giving power to the few. It started with talk of God, and our leaders are actually God. The Pharaoh is literally God, and so we have to obey him. And then they're like, oh, this isn't working so well, so let's just tell them we're appointed by God. And now it's all secular. So, you voted for it, so it's actually you who put us in power and you who give us our authority. When in reality, they have no authority, and all they have is manipulation, and all they have is propaganda. Man, yeah.
Wait, look, dude,
next question?
When you were on the absolute banger of a rant right there, it did pop into my mind. As much as we like to act and behave like we don't hold our American politicians on these pedestals and treat them like gods, like some of the rhetoric you hear from hardcore Trump supporters around him being the second coming of Jesus Christ, it's like, guys, we've seen this play out before. Did not work well for the Egyptians and the pharaohs back then, and it's not going to work out well for us right now either if we keep doing this and we can't hold these people accountable. And like the same can be said about the Dems who sit there and act like Obama was perfect and he did no wrong. Like, go to Syria or Libya and ask them what they think about Obama.
Exactly. Yeah, I get into that discussion all the time, and you hear like, "Oh, whataboutism?" It's like, no, they're all evil. There is no whataboutism. It's just like zoom out and look at what the system does and what the people in power do.
Politicians at the end of the day are still just politicians. Like, yeah, they can enjoy some of the same things you enjoy and support something that you may find most important, but at the end of the day, they're politicians and they're not working for you, even though they're supposed to.
Yeah. And the biggest danger is assuming that they're genuine in their claims of trying to help you. They're all the green pieces and all the climate activists, they're not actually helping humanity. Like they claim all these things, and maybe some of them are even brainwashed into thinking that it's for the good. And thank God for the people that do the research and actually change their beliefs, like the guy you were talking about earlier who was completely anti-Bitcoin and flipped his stance because he actually cared about the underlying issue. But most of the time it's just about fitting under a banner and feeling like you're part of the team. I'm pro the environment, I'm pro LGBTQ or whatever it is, but actually the government will twist all of those things around to manipulate us into hurting ourselves and into giving up our freedom to them. Because that's the only good that government cares about, is giving themselves more power. Everything else is just window dressing.
Well, I couldn't ask for a better person to join our panel at this point of the discussion. My friend GMONEY, who Zach is probably most aligned with you on the political spectrum of what needs to be done in this country. GMONEY, welcome, man.
Yo, what up, Q? Thanks for the invite. And how's it going, fellas? Love to be a part of this conversation. I mean, I've been talking about this for almost seems like years now, but we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this, right? Like, we've been domesticated through permissions, licenses, voting, like all that stuff is just proof of stake, right? It's handing over our power and authority to a small group of people that don't deserve our trust, right? In the end, right? Like, the trust is what has gotten us to this point, to where they have exploited us at every single avenue they can. And it's not going to stop. I like to believe that, most people are good. And I do believe most people are good. However, the incentive structures for the people in power are of it that, the people that tend to be psychopaths, unfortunately, tend to want to be in those positions of power. And so over the years, over the millennia, we're left with a group of psychopaths that will stop at nothing to rob and steal from us. And it's obvious now, right? You can look at the biolabs recently that were just released, that your tax dollars are literally funding, genocide. They're funding bioweapons. They're funding basically everything that is against the majority of all of your moralities, right? Whether it's genocide or creating bioweapons for other humans, like most of us don't support that stuff. And so when you give a small group of people the ultimate power, this is what happens. We can't fight them with guns. We're not going to go to Washington and fight them with muskets. The only way we beat these people is to delegitimize their power structure, delegitimize their abstract authority. And that is simply by taking the high road and opting out, right? We need to opt out. We need massive civil disobedience. We need Jason Lowry's soft war at a local level, right? We need to self-custodial our Bitcoin, tell them all to, basically go fuck themselves, and that we're no longer complying. And that this is essentially, a DDoS attack on their enforcement bureaucracy. And look, on a long enough timeline, when they're not able to print money, print energy out of nothing, they eventually have to come back and negotiate with us, because when they want to fund something, when they want to do something, and the money they print is worthless and nobody will work for it, then they have to start negotiating with us because we have all the power, we have all the wealth. And that's what this ultimately comes down to. And we don't need a lot of people too, by the way. A lot of people think we need a majority. And, back in 1776, everyone's talking about that recently, we're in the 250th year of what this country was built upon. It was built upon a tax revolt, 3%. And here we are with inflation, which inflation itself is actually, is actually taxation without representation. And so you're being taxed, you're being inflated at over 50% of your energy is being drained from you. And I think we're kind of at the end here, guys. Like, what else is there for us to do at the end of the day? Anyways, I'm kind of rambling here, but the point here is that the more we opt out and preserve our energy in a system that they cannot confiscate or tax, the sooner this crumbles and the sooner the power returns to the people. So thanks for having me, dude.
Let me just back that up real quick. Yeah, it doesn't matter if the people running for office are good, even legitimately good people, because government is built on the principle that you have to pay for it or else they have the right to kill you, which is evil as a principle. So no one has that right. And anyone that tries to use that system for good is trying to use evil to accomplish good, and that's a logical impossibility. So that the result will always end up being the same.
Yeah, I always also like to just point out, not only was that T-tax only 3%, but back when Egypt was in its prime power and all those slaves that Moses led left Egypt, their tax rate was under 20%, and they considered themselves slaves. So what are we given our tax rates today?
Free range slaves, yeah.
Are you? Like, honestly, are you even a free range slave?
That we all are.
I would disagree. If you wanted to leave this country, you would have to show some form of identification. In the context of this country, sure, you have free range around this country, but if you wanted to leave this country, you have to show some form of identification to get out and go somewhere else. You are captured here. In some way, shape, or form, you are. Now, you could leave your jurisdiction. Yeah. Like, the start of this conversation was around this new law in Illinois. Like, if you live in the state of Illinois and you want out, you can do that. You can move right across the border to Indiana and you're good. And you don't have to comply with those laws that Illinois is now placing. But if you want to go past it, let's say the federal government passes something and you want to opt out of that taxation system, not only do you have to show some form of identification, you have to pay that exit tax. And it's no different across other countries as well. Every country has some form of that. So
exactly. Well, and what I meant by a free range slave is just the fact that in the past, to be a slave, you had physical chains. It was obvious that you were a slave. You were locked into a certain area or locked into a room. Now they've tried to make the slavery invisible to you, so you don't realize that you're a slave. So you feel free, but you are actually still enslaved. 100%. Yeah, you're totally right. The free range is more of a metaphor, and we're actually not even fully free range. But yeah.
Totally. No, as you explain it, yes, 100% agree with that. And it's, again, it just goes back to this idea of like, George Carlin has a beautiful debate on a news panel that I've seen a few times where it's like, we have the illusion of freedom. We have the illusion of choice. You go to Baskin Robbins, you have 31 flavors, but when it comes time to vote, it's either red or blue. Like you only have a yes or a no vote. There's no nuance introduced to our political apparatus. And that in itself shows that we don't have this quote unquote freedom that we so desperately want and need. But hey, you can go to Baskin Robbins, you can get 31 different flavors. That's freedom. That's freedom.
But it also, the entire makeup of our democracy, quote unquote, is a proof of stake shitcoin, right? Because the original framing was one congressman per 30,000 people. And now we're up to, I think it's 800,000 people per one congressman. And so that's a dilution, right, of our representative government. And so we don't have any representation because the powers that be are manipulated by the money printer, and they just get bought off very simply because it's cheaper to just co-opt. There's 218 people making the decisions for 330 million. You only have to co-opt 218 people to destroy the lives of 330 million. Like that isn't scalable, right? That consensus mechanism is broken, right? We would call that an Ethereum XRP shitcoin, right? And so the consensus mechanism for humans is broken. It's been out of scale. Technology solves it, okay? And Bitcoin is actually a global governance program, right? Bitcoin is a sovereign nation state to where individuals that run nodes are basically direct legislators, and the miners are the military that are projecting power, that are protecting our property in cyberspace. And so when you look at it from that angle, you're in a parallel system in which the rules are thou shalt not steal from you, right? And so the basis that we all agree on is that's the fundamental principle. And so we need to stop thinking that we can just vote our way out of this every single time. And I haven't filed my taxes since 2020, since the fake election of Joe Biden. And really, that's what this is all about, right? We need to go after the actual, king at the top, right? Like our war here is not against Democrats, Republicans. Like that's not the battle here. The battle here is against the bankers, because bankers run governments and the governments actually control the people. And so we're going to the head of the snake, right? Bitcoin is digital 1776. This only works, right, when the majority of us opt out at scale, okay? And we only need about 3.51% of the population to do this. We don't need a majority because small peaceful revolutions, right? And look, like the framing of the direct Declaration of Independence was in fact that consent of the governed, right? Power of the government comes from consent of the governed. And so if we no longer consent, i.e. pay our taxes, right, we're delegitimizing them. We're saying you are no longer legitimate in the eyes of the populace. And, to further that, you as a human, right, should have full claim on your own energy, right? Full stop, right? And what the government does is they print basically claims on your energy infinitely at no cost to them. And so that system is utterly, it's unjust. It disrespects natural law. And so what we need to do is realize that any money that we give to someone should only be done through voluntary action, right? And that is how the new world, I believe, will be framed on a Bitcoin standard as the truth anchored as the global governance is the Bitcoin network itself. And once everybody joins, right, we are protected through watts in cyberspace where no military or governments can actually, confiscate that. So it's important, there's still meat space. I get it. But, what better time, guys, right? Like what else are you here to do? If not, understand where your power is and how you can gain it back. So anyways, this conversation needs to keep going. And, thank you guys for actually bringing attention to it.
I appreciate that, but also I think it's important for us to point out the reason we're having this conversation is we are reacting to news and legislation that has passed. We missed the ball, we missed the boat on this. And if anything, we should all be paying attention more closely to the type of legislation each of our own states and each of our own cities are passing. Because otherwise, we'll just keep sitting here bitching when, GMONEY, your mine state does this in California, or who knows, maybe Mississippi actually wakes up one day and does something stupid, or just does anything in general for Tatum.
Well, I think the counter argument to that is we don't want to just be reacting. What we actually want to do is create a system, which Bitcoin is, I feel like, the foundation of, that just makes them irrelevant. Because government is just a game that they have convinced everyone that they have to play, and we just have to make a better game and play that game. If we're spending all of our time reacting to the bullshit that they're doing, and that's allowing them to run the court and control our lives ultimately. Like the only way to really take back your own sovereignty and your own free will is to just fuck off with what they're doing and focus on our lives and focus on our freedoms that we want to cultivate and focus on our systems that are equitable and are just and are based on what's the word? I just lost my train of thought on freedom. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought on voluntarism.
This is the
voluntarism, because that is
dropping the football at the 1 yard line.
Yeah, I know. But no, that's we have to build the system based on voluntarism, because that's the only way you have a respectful system that does respect property rights and that doesn't enslave people. Because if it's not voluntary, then it is slavery. But that's like GMONEY was saying, I think that's the foundation. Bitcoin is the foundation of that world and of that society. And yes, you can play these games and you can try to fight them. And I'm all for people trying to do that and slowing them down. But it is ultimately just slowing them down, because as long as people still believe in the system of government, it's only going downhill. Like the only way to change that is to go on a different hill and play a different game entirely.
Yeah, I mean, look, I also think that there is just merit in this idea that we don't realize how much of an impact we can actually have and what we can do, what is in our control versus what is out of our control. And I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed by how confusing and convoluted things like the tax code are. Like, GMONEY, this is not the first time you and I have talked about the fact that you don't pay taxes. And like, when you explained it to me the first time we talked about it, like, there are tactics that the IRS uses to scare you into thinking like you have to do this. But if you take the time to take a step back and take a deep breath, and like the best quote I ever heard was, poor people complain about taxes, rich people study them. And if you just study the tax code, the cheat codes are there. Like, you can beat them at their own game. And it's so refreshing and so validating when like, hey, I'm playing by the rules you designed. I'm just better at them than you. And yeah, they're going to eventually come around and change them. But also you start to gain influence and you can start to make impactful change, not only in just like the tax sphere, but beyond that. I know a lot of this conversation started at the root of the idea, or not even the idea, the fact that Illinois has passed this insane law. But at the same time, like this isn't the end all be all. It doesn't just stop here. It's not going to be like, okay, they passed this law, we accept it. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we will see this go through the court system. We will see businesses leave the state. We will see people leave the state. We've seen it all across the world. The conversations that I have with clients who come to Bitcoin, well, a lot of them from Canada, they talk about how like, dude, I'm out of Canada. Like, Canada's crazy. I don't know how you're in California. Like, California's crazy. Like, it is becoming more and more normalized. And I think if anyone here has not read the book, The Sovereign Individual, you should all do yourself a favor and, I'll be honest, a disservice, because it is a very dense, frankly, like proper like textbook. But you will start to understand like the mechanisms of humanity and society follow a natural progression. And we are reaching that tipping point where like in this digitized information age that we live in, the only natural thing is to say like all of my property is digital. If this jurisdiction is going to do things that impact me and my family's livelihood, like I will pack my bags. I will go somewhere else. I will allow my tax dollars to go to a different jurisdiction who I'm more aligned with.
Yeah, but to your point, right? Like Keone and Bill followed all the rules. They actually asked for permission. They did everything and they're still sitting in jail. So like, even though you follow the rules, you may think you're safe, but you're not, right? Because they can literally indict a ham sandwich. And so I know we have talked about this, but realize too that this country was funded through tariffs before the IRS was even a thing, man. Like taxation itself was only a concept that was supposed to be temporary. And funny enough, it was established the same year as the Federal Reserve. And if you go back and look at Executive Order 12369, I talk about this a lot. Ronald Reagan proved in the 80s, he had a commission called the Grace Commission. He put together that wanted to see where all federal tax dollars went. Go look it up. And what they came to the conclusion with is that 0% of any of your federal income tax dollars go to any public service or good. Okay, all of that money went to interest on the debt and trying to go after people that didn't pay or whatever. Like all of it went to salaries of other people trying to find people. And so like literally none of it went to any public good. And so it's a complete ruse, it's a complete farce, it's a complete fear tactic. And to even, that's where we need to start the conversation at. Like taxation itself is theft. The only form of it is through consumption taxes and voluntary. But, if you just look at history, right? We funded this nation through tariffs. And that, if you want to buy something from another country and there's a tariff on it, like you get to voluntarily pay that, right? That's on you. It's not on everybody else to fund that. And so that's really what we need to go back to is a voluntary consumption tax. We need to eliminate all other claims on our energy before it's produced. And there's only one way out of this. Like no one's coming to save us, but Trump has helped. Trump has eliminated 70% of the IRS. The acting director, Scott Bessent, has left the position. So there's currently nobody directing the IRS right now. So if you think about it, like the IRS has literally been completely wiped out for the most part. And so, yeah, they'll send threatening letters and stuff. But like, at the end of the day, the letters and the government tax liens don't do anything on the Bitcoin ledger. They cannot confiscate or tax it on the Bitcoin ledger itself. And so people really need to learn self-custody. They really need to learn that, you can't vote your way out of it. Even if you follow the rules, like you're still, you can still get picked up, man. Like I said, Bill and Keone are a great example of that. They tried to do everything they could and they still got thrown in there and they still got fined from the corrupt institutional people that we pay their salaries. Like you're literally paying for your own tyranny at this point. And so I think we just need to realize that and try to understand that like you're not going to logic your way out of this because the only way to stop systemic exploitation is through physical confrontation. And so we don't need to do physical confrontation. We can do it digitally now. We have the tools, we have the power, and the network is strong enough. And we have the backing of the president, you guys. Like the president has pushed Bitcoin, he's pushed crypto, right? And, he was at the Bitcoin conference and he told, the strongest sentence Trump said in Nashville was Bitcoin is about freedom, sovereignty, and independence from government coercion and control. And if you really think about that last part, independence from government coercion and control, like that's digital 1776. That's soft war in a nutshell. And he's actually kind of telling you, like, hey guys, I kind of like got rid of the IRS. I kind of dissipated them. But like you guys have to like move the needle here. Like I can't just, wave a wand and say everybody don't pay. Like you guys need to really like see the corruption, right? You guys need to end it yourselves because this has to carry on for way past our lifetimes. This can't be just a simple fix. So
I want to now graciously introduce my dear friends from the Bitcoin News team. Tatum, I hope you haven't fallen asleep. There's no way given the amount of Adderall and coffee you're drinking, but want to also remind you
No,
that you're on
I'm
a
selling
payroll.
miners right now.
Oh, okay. So you're actually working, which I should probably do at some point today.
Yeah, but I get to listen to you while I do it, man. I wouldn't want anything else.
So we've gone all across the spectrum. The conversation obviously started with the new Illinois tax. We went and talked about the requirement in California to prove that you are gay to get certain types of loans. And just overall, the state of our political apparatus. I want to turn the mic over to the Bitcoin News team and let them kind of share with us some of the sentiment that they're seeing, gathering, and their thoughts before we dive deeper into some of what GMONEY said. Because I have thoughts.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for having me. This is Rob of Bitcoin News. Good friend of Q. Q is a good friend of the program. Glad to have you on stage with me. Good to hear from you, man. Yeah, it's wild times out there, right? I mean, we've got the Dow Jones about 52,000, new all-time high. Bitcoin is not falling along. Is it the canary in the coal mine, or is it just waiting for the hot ball of money to travel on over? I mean, I've been sort of live stream today with John Gillen of Milk Road Macro. And what he was saying, he did this interview with this guy, Henrik Zeberg. And Zeberg was saying, we're going to see the blow off top happen first in Asia. And I think we're seeing that right now in Korea. I mean, if you look at the Korean Kospi index, it's just like vertical. It's 3x in 1 year. You know, this is their major stock index, 3x in 1 year, based off of two names. And he says that's gonna turn over, then it's gonna come to America. And he still thinks that we're gonna see Bitcoin rally hard. The 4-year cycle is gonna be obliterated. That's the hot money is gonna travel into Bitcoin within this year, which would be very interesting to see. But then he thinks that that's going to lead to a bigger implosion at the end of the day. I mean, what we're seeing right now is crazy, right? Like, we just engaged in war with Iran, and then we say it's all over, and we are handing over $300 billion and have the same exact situation that we had before February 28th. We got a new
Hang
Fed
on.
chair.
No. We're gonna unpack that because my
Tell me.
Iranian government won the war and have absolutely made the U.S., Israel, and the rest of the world look like absolute fools. Because reminder that because of this new deal, the Iranian government is getting $300 billion, which is 10x what Obama's deal gave them. So Trump bitching about the Obama deal, tearing it up, and then this is the position that we're in. Mind you, given inflation and all that, that 10x probably has less purchasing power than it did back in 2015. But yeah, I'm just going to forever dunk on everyone who said that this war was a good idea. You're all fucking idiots and you gave more power to a tyrannical government in Iran. That is all.
They have definitely proven that they are at least a regional superpower, right? I mean, they've got the tech to maintain their territory and scare away our aircraft carriers. So, and they were able to get $300 billion for doing so. Really unprecedented stuff. And I mean, it's crazy that we didn't have this economic meltdown due to oil, but a lot of it is coming out that China was willing to sort of save the world in many ways and let their on-water oil go to all these different countries that were desperately in need, cut down their strategic petroleum reserve, and play nice to avoid a global meltdown. So this was just such a horrible decision, and nothing was achieved. And it just the no new wars president became a $300 billion losing war president. But that's where we are right now. I mean, it's really crazy. It's like it feels as if the world is just sleepwalking into, I don't know, what do you call it? But it's euphoria and malaise and depression all at the same time, dude. But thank God for Bitcoin.
I mean, like, again, all of this ties back to the point of this conversation and where we've taken it, which is this idea that we continuously allow our politicians to just do what they see as fit, and we support them because we've somehow turned our political apparatus into like the latest sports team where team red versus team blue, whatever team red does, if you're on team red, you have to support. And if you speak up against it or question it or have reservations around the policy, oh, well, then you're not really a Republican, you're actually a communist, and vice versa. Oh, you must be a crazy Trump supporter because you like Bitcoin. So we've unfortunately reached this like dangerous tipping point in our country, because if we can't find if we can't find the ability to have nuance in our political apparatus, like, we're fucked. Pardon my French for the children listening.
Nuance is out the window, bro. Nuance is like it's a money grab, dude. It's a money grab. You're seeing it on the top level, right? I mean, the Trumps just made $2.3 billion in the last year and a half off of crypto endeavors.
Can we talk
What?
about Hunter Biden's dunk? Absolute dunk. I know G Money is like cringing at the thought of us saying Hunter Biden like low key stuck it to the man, but like he said no lies in his tweet. He says no lies.
I don't think it's him running that account.
I'm here.
I love the Hunter Biden psyop, by the way.
I'm here for it.
I mean,
here for the
it's
Hunter
great.
Biden glow
Like
up.
This
Hunter
is a
Biden
great
psyop
era
is
of the internet
next
right
level. And the guy doesn't pay his taxes. Like, what a legend.
Dude, see, G Money, you have more and more in common with Hunter Biden than you think. You both smoke crack.
Hookers, G Money.
I want to also kind of like make sure we still focus on the Bitcoin of it. And I think one of the points I brought up very early, I think before our other three panelists were even with us, was this idea of following the money. And you look at a lot of the policies that Trump has pushed forward, and I know G Money, you were mentioning that, like, you know, Trump spoke at the Nashville conference a couple of years back, like he's been great for Bitcoin. I would argue, honestly, like he's been great for himself, and he's been great for his donors. Like if you pay enough, you can get a pardon with this president. If you pay enough, he'll make sure that your business, you know, gets whatever funding and bills passed to ensure the success of your new operation. But like you're an everyday guy with no ability to influence him or his decision making, like you're left out in the lurch, just crossing your fingers that the next guy with a big check is pushing for things that you support. And I'm willing to bet an outsized amount that what we will see come out of this new Illinois law as people do more and more digging is that Pritzker or whatever the fuck this idiot's name actually is, I don't really care about learning, is in the pocket of the banks. And the reason I'm fairly confident about that is look at the way that David Sachs spoke about the Clarity Act and the Genius Act and around the topic of stablecoins issuing interest. The small banks were the biggest people who were pounding the drum saying, you can't do that. Please don't do that. It will put us out of business. Well, guess what? In a free fucking market, that's what is supposed to happen. If new technology comes up that makes your business practice obsolete, you either figure out how to adopt this new tech or you go out of business. That is the natural progression of industry. And yet, for some reason, we continue to try to create these regulatory moats to drag incumbents back into power and allow them to remain for what, other than the fact that they have enough money to fund the politicians to make sure these policies go into place. So, again, I go on my rants, I go on my soapbox, but I turn this topic discussion over to our panel. Zach, I'll let you start.
I mean, yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like government is not genuine. It's founded on evil. It's founded on things that harm humanity, and they just use propaganda and words to make you feel like they're doing something good. You know, at the end of the day, Trump will go to war for your country if you give him enough money, right? Like, people want to assume that, oh, and he must have had like legitimate reasons to go to this war. He must have had, you know, he wants the best for humanity, or he wants the best for even Israel or whatever. But like, why would we assume that the leadership or people that are now in the leadership in Iran weren't in on this whole thing to begin with, weren't trying to do what actually ended up happening in the first place? Like, we're told so little about what's actually going on in the behind the scenes in these conversations that are going on. Why would we assume that it's legitimate? Why would we assume that they're speaking honestly at all? Like, I can't believe that they have any of our interests in mind at all. And that's not the point of government at all. Like, our interests are at the bottom of the list. Our interests only matter insofar as we believe and we have faith that they should have power. And that's all they care about us as far as we go. As long as we support them in some way, they're happy, or support the system that supports them.
I'll just push back a little bit on the Trump thing, just because when you're looking at the global game and the global chessboard, like, America needs Bitcoin the least, right? We have the dominant military, we have the dominant reserve currency. Like, we don't need Bitcoin, honestly, right? So why is Trump forcing crypto on the entire world, right? Ask yourself a simple question. He doesn't need it. We don't need it. Is he doing it for money, or is he doing it to provide literacy to the world on what financial independence means, on what actual banking is. It's a total Zionist fraud. And so, we don't have to go into the details of all the, different conflicts and stuff. But if you look at the outcomes, right? I mean, they're not, forever wars. We got in and out of Venezuela. We're signing a peace deal with Iran right now. And, if you go back, and look at the history, Iran was been basically ran by City of London, Zionism, whatever you want to call it, the Vatican, for over 50 years, right? The CIA put in Khomeini once they were going to nationalize their oil. And nationalizing their oil would have eliminated all the grifters, eliminated the CIA, the City of London, and the Zionists from profiting from another country's resources. But
I think you mean Shah.
Well, yeah, I mean, they put Khomeini in, right?
In 79, but it was Mossadegh in 53 that they wanted to overthrow, and they reinstalled the Shah. But we need to unpack something, because I disagree with you wholeheartedly on Trump's intentions here. Do you really think if David Bailey did not cut a very, very large check for Donald Trump, that he would have released Ross Ulbricht or been doing anything as it pertains to Bitcoin? Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly forecasted this. So if you go back to Trump's first term, actually, and you look at what Steve Mnuchin did with Brian Brooks. So if you guys go back to his first term, when the COVID disaster was happening, the Office of the Controller of the Currency, it's called the OCC, for those that aren't familiar with it, they control like 70% of the banks in this country. And what happened was, during the whole COVID fiasco, Steve Mnuchin appointed a guy named Brian Brooks, who at the time was chief legal officer of Coinbase. And back then, in 2020, Trump made it legal for banks to custody Bitcoin through the office of the OCC and the Treasury. So, like, if you actually go back and connect the dots, like, Trump has been all in on this for a very long time. He's just been, like, he couldn't come out and say it, though, right? Like, if Trump were to come out as a Bitcoin maximalist, he'd basically be saying that the dollar is worthless. We're transitioning to this new currency. And like that, like, let's be honest, like, nobody would actually accept that. And so he's doing it in a very camouflaged way. And that's why he kind of releases his shitcoins and stuff, because he's trying to help provide literacy to people, like, to young people, because the ultimate war here is a culture war. Like, trying to onboard people to crypto is a scary thing in the first place. And so he's trying to teach people, like, hey, this is where we're going. Like, you should probably do some research. And, like, a lot of us got in because of, number go up. And a lot of us bought shitcoins. I bought every shitcoin in the planet when I first got involved. Like, and they all went to zero except Bitcoin. And I was like, wow, like, this Bitcoin thing seems to be different than all these other things. I should probably do a little bit more research on this one thing. And that's, how I've been here for 10 plus years now, right? So, like, I think, we can say all these things. We can get emotional about it and say, well, he's just a grifter and he's just doing, like, yeah, you can say that. But at the end of the day, like, it's a learning experience. Nobody's, like, here to, like, hold your hand through the entire thing. And, like, pain is a teacher. Like, I'd rather learn in a few years about the pain of a shitcoin than being rugged for my life, my family's life, my kids' life, my grandkids' life by a central bank for a millennia, right? Like think of what's actually happening here from a bigger picture. And I think that's the game plan. Now, you can disagree, that's fine. I just think I like to try to be more, logical from a wider angle, but, think about that.
I think sometimes we can find what we're looking for when we, like, try to look between the lines. For me, I always just come back to show me the incentives and I will show you the outcomes. While, yes, he did push policy forward that allowed the banks to hold Bitcoin, he has taken a different stance in this term. And I will point 110% of that being rooted in the fact that he got so much money from very, very influential crypto whales, not even just Bitcoin whales, but look at Justin Sun. Justin Sun literally got a pardon because he gave Trump enough money. And you don't think SBF is doing the same thing right now behind the scenes with his family? Like,
no, because SBF is just doing tricks on it, bouncing on it on Twitter. It's crazy how hard he is simping for that pardon on Twitter.
I mean, look, SBF is just like, an absolute insane person, and I hate that, like, low key, like, he is my doppelganger. But we're not going to unpack that today.
Oh my God, I have never seen that until you just said it. You fucked up saying that.
But again, like, G-Money, I think something that you said very early on in your rant is important, though. Like, the U.S. has always, and frankly, still continues to have the least incentive to adopt a Bitcoin standard, at least on a global scale, because right now, the global monetary system still funnels through the US dollar. Yes, we know about the Rothschilds. We can put a tinfoil hat on another time and like really go down that rabbit hole. But at its core, the entire world operates on a dollar system. You cannot trade oil in the global markets without being a part of the SWIFT system. Look at Russia as the best example of this. And we have now weaponized the dollar. But by weaponizing the dollar, you also create an inverse incentive in that if I'm cut out of this system and there is a different monetary system that is permissionless, that can be used without anyone telling me yes, no, maybe, like Bitcoin, there is a reason why the Iranian government said at one point during their posturing and negotiations, we will accept a toll payment via Bitcoin to come through the Strait of Hormuz. It completely skips over the SWIFT system. It gives the US zero ability to control, manipulate, or force Iran's hand to do anything whatsoever. And sure, that may not be the final version, but again, that bell has been rung. And we will start to see that discussion continue to happen at a global scale where other countries, when they finally are getting pushed around by the US, being like, fuck you, we'll just accept Bitcoin. Like, I don't need to do your stupid policies because I don't need them anymore. That's
So when did that happen though? Too, it's funny, right? After Trump killed, right, the Khomeini, whatever, they started accepting Bitcoin, which is kind of a funny thing because why didn't they do that before? Why were they using stable coins? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So who was really in control there that they wouldn't just go around it initially from the get go?
Here's
the deeper conversation.
Here's something to unpack. Go look at the hash rate in June of 25. There is a distinct moment where that hash rate dropped down that coincides when we, quote unquote, bombed the shit out of their nuclear sites. Those weren't nuclear sites. Those were nuclear power plants and the excess energy. Iran has been in the forefront of mining Bitcoin, but they're also playing 3D chess. They're not putting everything in one wallet. There's no one wallet that the IRGC controls. It's multiple wallets. It's multiple wallets with just enough Bitcoin that it makes it look like it's retail, but it's not. Iran will one day come out very soon and they will have more Bitcoin than we know and realize. And they will be a global player in this space. And Bitcoiners who are upset about that need to get off their high horse and realize the incentives were baked in. This was an inevitability. Iran has already been stacking. They are mining Bitcoin and they have a stack bigger than we are ready to accept or can imagine.
Yeah, but back to your point about Trump taking money and all that other stuff. Like, it's a beautiful exposure operation, right? Because on one hand, he's pushing the underlying system, right? Getting rules, regulations, the Clarity Act, all that stuff in stone into law. Because like once this gets settled, guys, and once Bitcoin gets totally injected into the system, like you can't undo that, right? Like there's no undoing it once the thing's been done. And so like think of this as a very pivotal time once the entire world is like, has, you've got countries with reserve stacks and this and that. Like we're not going back to a piece of paper that can just be printed. Like governments of the world won't allow that. And so again, once this is implemented, like there's no going back. There's no undoing this. And so, about the grift and this and that, like, yeah, he's exposing the proof of stake democracy for what it is, right? It's always been a shell game. It's always been a grift. Politicians have always been paid off to do things. And so on one hand, he's exposing everything. And on the other hand, he's implementing a system that will end that. And so it's kind of, it's kind of the best of both worlds. And if you like Trump or don't like him, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, like Bitcoin will be, the new global order that's imposed on the entire world. And it's funny because, your Q name itself, right? People always ask, where do you get your confidence from? How can you prove it? Why are you assuming this? Like, I've got mathematical, proofs that are equal to guessing a private key, from the QAnon conspiracy, you can call it, right? Like, I actually have a open source intel research that I've been doing for the last 10 years that basically prove on chain that all these things are connected to Bitcoin. Like you either believe Bitcoin is just some random Japanese guy in his freaking basement with, his mom making him freaking sushi, or every piece of Bitcoin technology that is U.S. military-grade, nuclear-proof technology was put together behind the scenes, and somehow, miraculously, we're at this point now where a president is onboarding it to the world. So, those are the two, binary options you have. There's no in between, right? You either think it's some random group of people that put it together that just got lucky that they built the most beautiful, perfect system in the entire world, that we now have military generals talking about proof of power projection, or that maybe this was a white hat military plan from the get-go to save the world from itself and killing itself, right? I think that's a pretty reasonable conclusion at this point. And so I like to, think of, the conclusion that, yeah, there probably was a group of people that realized that the bankers assassinated JFK after Executive Order 11110 because they didn't want, their grift of, interest being paid to a private corporation to be eliminated, right? Think about the greatest, business on earth. They get to create money out of nothing and charge everybody else to use it. So anyways, that's kind of the conspiracy. Again, put on the tinfoil hat a little bit. I put a little proof in the comments if you want to go down that rabbit hole for some of you, especially Q, being the Q guy you are. No, it's just funny enough. But anyways, yeah, funny conversation, great conversation.
Look, I always love going back and forth with you. We will rip together, you and I, on the new Bitcoin Well podcast, which I will shamelessly plug right now. That will be coming out on the other side of the 4th. Rob, we've hijacked this conversation a little bit, and I want to give you an opportunity to join the discussion as well.
No, all good. I mean, I might go a middle path between you two and say that Bitcoin might have just been created by one guy or a group of guys, and it got out there, and after a couple of years, the government realized, oh, we can't kill this thing, and maybe it offers us a way out. They know that this debt is unpayable, that we're just going to be squashed by it eventually, and the fact that if they are able to have a asset that can absorb all of this liquidity that needs to be created, all these dollars printed out of thin air, in order to pay the interest on the debt as it continues to grow, it gives them an out, right? If any other asset, whether it's stocks or houses, whatever, it just leads to more unrest because of the inequality and the people that already own it. Bitcoin is this brand new thing, and stuffing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 trillion dollars into it doesn't make people mad the same way that putting that same amount of money into the stock market or real estate would. So I think that at some point the government probably realized, okay, we can't kill this thing. It is around the world. It is everywhere. And it actually allows us to sort of give us a soft exit, and hopefully one that is less violent. I mean, I'm an American. I had my eyes open to the fact that we are an empire in many ways for well over a decade, right? But at the same time, I mean, I love my family, my friends, and want to see these people succeed and us do well, but also not destroy this earth. So hopefully, I mean, maybe I'm just painting a pretty picture because that's what I want it to be. But I think Bitcoin, it separates money from state, right? And that's the goal at the end of the day. And a state with an unpayable debt load in the order of, which will soon be $100 trillion, definitely over that by the time that we are in old age. Hopefully it gives them a transition and a way out and a way to remove this power from people who don't deserve it and yet not destroy America in the process.
I think one thing that you said that I really want to glob onto is the idea that Bitcoin was created as a separation of money and state. And over the last few years, I've been more and more disheartened by the simping that continues to happen when a politician says something positive around Bitcoin and we're like, oh yay, another one. It's like, guys, that wasn't the point of this. Like, point of this was actually to take away their power, control, and influence over our money. But whether or not that will happen in this country, we do need to again be mindful of the actions that our politicians who are in power today and the decisions they make, because as we give them more control, as we allow them to say, hey, we can tax you 0.2% every time you transact or move Bitcoin if you're in the state of Illinois, What happens when the next politician takes a more aggressive? You know what? 0.2 is not enough. We're going to go up to 1%. We're going to go up to 5%. We're going to go up to 10%. And that's been the natural progression of taxation in this country. We just continue to push it higher and higher without a second thought because it's, maybe it's not as egregious as 5xing on the next go around. Maybe it just adds 5 basis points. Maybe it doubles, whatever it is. But if we sit idly by and allow these things to happen right now, we can't be upset in 5 years when this becomes the federal mandate that every single person in the United States, if they send Bitcoin around, they're going to be charged a 20 basis point tax. So I also would be remiss and would not be doing my job if I don't remind everyone that Bitcoin Well is the only non-custodial exchange that operates in the United States. So stop using Coinbase, stop using Kraken, stop using every other custodial exchange. Come to Bitcoin Well, make your purchases, send them directly and immediately to self-custody so you are not just at the behest of Coinbase and these other companies.
Dude, we got to work on your segues into your ad reads. That was more brutal than mine were.
Yeah, but you don't get an ad read today. So for now, this was the best you're going to get.
Oh, yeah? Compass mining. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Hey.
See how I can do that?
I said I was kidding.
You see how I can do that? That's right. That's right, Tatum. You stay in line. You stay in line. We've been chatting for far too long. I do have a job to do. Tatum, you also have a job to do. I want to give everyone sort of a last chance to discuss anything, final thoughts, and make sure you're giving everyone up here a follow, please. And of course, if you're buying Bitcoin at a custodial exchange, flip it over to a non-custodial exchange like Bitcoin Well.
Yeah. Get into Bitcoin mining. Do research on it. If you are curious, just start researching. You can reach out to me and ask me questions. I love talking about it, but it's less complex than it seems on the outside. And I think that everyone needs to understand it. It's the coolest thing about Bitcoin, in my opinion. And there's individual rabbit holes down each other rabbit hole within mining itself. It's crazy. Go on eBay, spend $40 to get some, defunct S7 or something like that, and just tinker around with it because it might unlock some real potential that you didn't know that you had. So do your research on Bitcoin mining. It's the greatest thing that has been entered into this world.
I heard Tatum will even come to your house directly and set it up and give you a lap dance too. I heard
Lap dance is
might be an extra fee for the lap dance.
It's a little extra.
You have to pay to not get the lap dance.
Yeah, actually, there's a fee for no lap dance.
Rob, I'll give you the final word, my friend.
Yeah, mine real Bitcoin, buy real Bitcoin. Take it into self-custody. Don't let these governmental ghouls take their share. We are a free people. You have the right to store your wealth in a sovereign fashion. Be free. Sentiment is shit right now, but we've got Q doing spaces, so you know that the vibes are about to get a hell of a lot higher.
Damn straight.
I just wanted to wrap up too a little bit and comment on something else said earlier, but no, I don't think it's necessary that government agencies made Bitcoin fire, and the wheel and the idea of money itself were all created by complete randos and groups of humans just doing what made sense and coming into the best ideas that existed and then running with those. I don't see Bitcoin as any different. And Q is totally right that politicians getting on board with Bitcoin is not the end all be all. But if Bitcoin was going to succeed, this was always going to happen, and politicians were always going to want to show up because it's the hardest money that exists, and they can't avoid that fact. So at the end of the day, Bitcoin is the best thing in the world. And if you want to own it for yourself, you need to put it in self-custody and not keep that shit on an exchange, man. But yeah, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for coming. This was a great spaces.
Cheers. Peace.
Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.